Hi, my name is Alexis Eichel, and I'm the landlord engagement specialist with Tacoma Housing Authority. And if you're here to learn a little bit of information about Tacoma Housing Authority's inspection process and meet with one of our amazing inspectors, you are in the right place. So we have Stacey Peterson-Wilson with us, and she is a Tacoma Housing Authority inspector. And she is going to review her PowerPoint with us today. And then we will open it up for questions and answers towards the end. Please submit any questions you have using the Q&A feature. And Stacey, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
Hi there, my name is Stacey, and I, like Alexa said, I am an inspector with Tacoma Housing Authority. We currently have 4 inspectors that serve approximately 3,000 households. I apologize, my Alexa is going off every time I talk to Alexis. So we serve approximately 3,000 households. We uphold HUD's criteria for making sure that every client lives in a safe, decent, and sanitary household. And our landlords are important to us. We have plenty of clients, but we definitely need landlords. We have 3 inspectors that work for Tacoma Housing. Jeffrey Fisher, who has a military background and has also worked for 2 different housing authorities. And we have Sam Nam, who has worked for Tacoma Housing for 30 years. He knows the ins and outs of inspections. We have Steve Highnote. He also comes from a housing authority background and construction and maintenance. I myself come from housing property management, and I have been with Tacoma Housing for almost 4 years now. So I am going to share a PowerPoint with you. Bear with me a second. There we go. So today we will be talking about HCV inspections. And I know some of you have joined us for these webinars before. Some of you are new. We will take some questions after we work through the PowerPoint and answer any questions and concerns you might have. So why does PHA inspect? Well, HUD has criteria for each household to ensure that the clients are living in a respectable household, that landlords are maintaining those households, and that clients are maintaining. We have different types of inspections. Right now, some of you may have noticed that we have gone on a biannual inspection. We used to come out once a year. We now come out once every 2 years. A lot of housing authorities have moved to that inspection schedule quite a while ago, 4 to 5 years ago. We held out as long as we could and just recently went to a biannual schedule. So what we do is when you have a potential tenant and that tenant is on housing, they will provide you with their voucher. And at that time, your process is just the same as with any other tenant, except for they do have a small packet called Request for Tenancy that you fill out, you return to the housing authority. And then the housing authority will also contact you to schedule an inspection. So they push that information over to the inspector's side, and we will contact you and get that set up. The inspection does need to be done before the tenant moves in. This is really important because there are a few things that would possibly keep the family from being able to move into the home. And one of that is lead-based paint. And we'll get into that a little bit later. So we do an initial inspection before the tenant moves in. We have your contact information. We will communicate directly with you. We answer any concerns that you might have. We like to be contacted. We like to talk to you. We want this process to go smoothly as possible, and we just love our landlords. So we will schedule that. We will come out and inspect. If there are some items that do need to be repaired before the family moves in, we will allow time for that. We are really at your beck and call because we know that you want to get the place rented and we want to get the tenants in. So the initial inspection, we have an annual inspection that has been moved to biannual now. That's every 2 years from when the tenant moves in. We have complaint, or what we call special inspections. And that is if the tenant has concerns or you have concerns or we get a complaint from a neighbor, we will come out and we will do that special inspection. And quality control. And what that is we just take a sampling, about 10% of our yearly inspections, and go back out and re-inspect. We just want to make sure that our inspectors are doing their jobs. If there were any questions about the inspections, we just want to get back out there and take another look at that. So inspection requirements. This is what HUD requires the housing authority to uphold, basically. And they're called housing quality standards. What these are is, again, you'll hear this a lot: decent, safe, and sanitary. Everything we do comes back to this. If a tenant or a landlord has a question of why does this fail, it's usually because one of these items, it's not decent, safe, or sanitary. And we'll get into that with the 13 criteria that falls underneath that. So sanitary facilities, basically, this is just saying that there's a bathroom and that bathroom is functional. The main bath has to have a sink. It has to have a bathtub, shower, and a commode that is in working condition. And there can't be any plumbing issues. So HUD can be pretty basic in their requirements. We know that urban dwellings, older dwellings, there can be sometimes we see a refrigerator in a closet. Sometimes we see a stove in a hallway. It's just due to lack of space and the design of that dwelling. Food preparation and refuse disposal. This just says that there is a kitchen, that it can accommodate proper food preparation, that the appliances work, that the appliances go up to temp or keep temp, that there's proper cabinetry, proper countertops, and refuse disposal also falls under that. There has to be regular trash pickup. Space and security. So this is kind of interesting. We see a lot of houses where a house has been turned into a duplex and the washer and dryer are common areas. At no time can a tenant pass through another tenant's space in order to access those. Same with garages, sheds, anything like that. Security is that the doors and windows lock. It's sufficient. There's sufficient outdoor lighting. Nobody can get into that house. That family needs to feel safe and the structure has to be safe. Then we talk about thermal environment. So it does have to have working heaters. There is no requirement for air conditioners, not that we really need them too much in this area. There has to be proper ventilation. That is a big one. That is a really big one with HUD. All bathrooms need ventilation or a window. There has to be fresh air. You can't have sealed off areas that really creates, especially a mold environment. And heaters, yes, all heaters do need to be working and they do have to be appropriate. Illumination and electricity. I can definitely, after this meeting, I can share a form that we use to get into specifics about this 13 criteria. This is basically a checklist when we walk through that that we check, that we follow. So all outlets need to work. They need to be grounded. I know a lot of older buildings, the landlords will take an old 2-prong outlet, put a 3-prong in, it's not grounded. We have some workarounds with that, but that's something that we do catch in a lot of older housing. And when I do share this checklist, what will be nice is these are things that you can look over, walk through your own home, and be prepared for when we do arrive. There won't be any surprises. So structure and materials. This is interior and exterior. It obviously has to be structurally sound. Like I said, a lot of these are basics. Rarely do we walk into a home that's not structurally sound. We do check city code. If there are any city code violations, that is something that will impact our inspection. Interior air quality, again, this has to do with ventilation, very, very important. Water supply, the household, the tenant has to have the water turned on. The landlord has to have the water turned on. Every once in a while, we'll come into a place where the landlord has turned off the utilities in between tenants because they expect the tenant to put that back in their name. We need them turned on. We cannot inspect a unit that does not have running water or electricity or gas. So they have to have an appropriate water supply. It has to be potable water that needs to be turned on. There needs to be appropriate water pressure. And here we get into lead-based paint. This is the main reason why you do not move a family into a home without an HQS inspection. So lead-based paint, any structure built before 1978, we assume that there is lead-based paint. There can be 5 coats of latex on the outside of the building. We still have to assume. So as long as that latex paint or whatever is on the outside of that building, if it's not damaged, cracked, chipped paint, then we consider that encapsulated. It is okay. Any chipped paint, and we may unfortunately have to fail it for lead-based paint. Now, that's not a big deal if there's no child under 6. So if there's no child under 6 in that household, we may ask you to just touch it up. No big deal. If there's a child under 6, we cannot move them into that household unless you choose to go through full abatement. But that is a landlord choice. Access, they obviously have to have appropriate ingress, egress, access. Again, it can't be a situation where they have to go through anybody else's living space to access their own. So if you have a mother-in-law apartment, if you've turned a house into a duplex or a fourplex, they have to have their own entry. Site and neighborhood conditions. This is kind of a 2-pronged requirement here, because site and neighborhood could also mean if you have a building next door that's falling down, a building next door that is condemned and considered unsafe, where it could affect the household that the tenants are occupying, that has to be addressed. The other part of that is the tenants. If the tenants are creating if they're not taking care of the yard, if they have garbage and refuse out there, if fences are falling down, we will need to address that too. Sanitary conditions, basically there, and I apologize for this, no standing sewage, no mold, no pests, cockroaches. So we will check for that before we move in. That is something that we check closely when we do our inspections to make sure that the tenant's not creating an unsanitary condition, or if there is a landlord issue that needs to be addressed, that is being addressed. And then smoke detectors, carbon monoxide alarms. Every floor has to have a smoke detector. We prefer that they are somewhere kind of in a common area outside the bedrooms. And every floor has to have a carbon monoxide alarm. If a tenant is occupying a house and there is not at least one working smoke detector on each floor and not one carbon monoxide alarm, that is a 24-hour fail. It needs to be replaced. We will come right back out the next day and follow up on that. So how to prepare for an inspection. And I'm going to start this by saying that it's always a good idea to have a good working relationship with your tenants. Communication is key, checking in, giving them a call, saying, I received a letter. I see that THA is coming out. Is there anything that you need? Anything that needs to be repaired? Is there anything I need as a landlord to know about? Perform an inspection of your own. I always suggest that landlords are in each and every unit that they lease out at least once a year, sometimes every 6 months. It's also good to do a drive-by and just get a good look at the outside of the house. A lot of times the outside will give you a good idea of what's going on the inside. So perform an inspection of your own and review a list of the fail items. Like I said, I can make that list available to you. It's good to know what we're looking at. Now, HUD allows inspectors to have a bit of discretion when it comes to what's a fail and what's a pass. And that is just because every house is different. Every apartment is different. You know, what may be unsafe in one home because of where it's located or the height or children in the home or somebody who's disabled may not be safe in another home or may be safe in another home. So again, we have some discretion. If there is something that fails, we will talk to you about it and we will send a letter out. Feel free to contact us, ask questions. Communication with us, communication with the tenant is going to make everything go easier. Make repairs in advance. Again, this just stems from doing your own inspections and contacting tenants. If you have any questions, again, please contact us. And then work with the tenant on lease violations. So a few things are addressed in our inspections, and some of those is tenant damage. Some of that is tenant violating the lease. If we see that there's 6 dogs in that dwelling, we're just going to that the landlord has not approved that. If we're seeing, bear with me here. If we're seeing writing on the walls, holes punched into the walls, doors taken off the hinges, we are going to address that with the tenant, and we're going to assume that that is tenant damage. At that time, it does fall back on the landlord to uphold their own lease. You know, the landlord needs to contact if there's a 14-day notice for the tenant to address it or any type of lease violations. That is up to the landlord to uphold. Send copies of those to us. As a housing authority, we subsidize rent. We definitely work closely with landlords, but we do not uphold that lease. We do not enforce that lease. Where we're advantageous to you is that we can contact the tenant. We can put a little bit of pressure on them. We can talk about what it would take to keep their subsidy. And we can definitely work with you, give you some ideas, and just be your support on that. But again, the housing authority does not enforce a tenant landlord lease. So on the inspection process, again, you will have a packet that will be provided to you that is called a RAFTA, and that is just a request for tenancy. That will get sent to the housing authority. They will set up your account if you're a new account. They will enter all the information. They may contact you for extra information. How to get an inspection right away is to make sure that we have all that information. If we are going back and forth, trying to get information from the landlord or information from the tenant, that can definitely delay the process. So even if you think you might be jumping the gun a little bit, get that into us, communicate with us, we'll get that started. So that, again, that comes to the housing inspectors. We will schedule the inspection. We will perform the inspection. And the minute that inspection passes, you can contact the tenant and sign the lease. We are really the say-so when it comes to getting a tenant in there. Once that inspector's been in there, once they've given the okay, you can move that tenant right in. And then what you will do is you will send a copy of that lease to the housing authority. We will need a copy of that for their file. So with annual inspections, we send the landlord a copy that we will be out to inspect. We typically do it about 20 days in advance. So we will schedule and we will notify the tenant. The tenant needs to be present for that inspection. If they cannot be, they can work it out with the landlord that the landlord can be present, or they can have another adult over 18 years old there for us. So if a tenant says, I can't be there for that, we give them other options. Okay. And then, so we do that inspection. We provide our, if there are any items that fail on that inspection, we will provide the tenant and the landlord a letter to notify that. If there's not, if that inspection passes, simple, we just let the tenant know that the inspection has passed and that they won't see us again for another year or two. So the complaint inspection, again, I kind of went over that a little bit at the beginning. Never hesitate to contact us, ask for an inspector, ask for a special inspection, and let us know why. We are happy to come out for any landlord concerns for any reason. So COVID-19 has really thrown a monkey wrench into, I think, everything. We'll just say everything. We have had a few changes. I know that some landlords have received emails from us that are asking if they can owner certify in lieu of an inspection. What this does is it allows us to catch up on the inspections that were not performed during late 2020 and early 2021. You will see more emails from us. Communication may be a little bit different. How you contact us may be a little bit different. We have moved away from a single housing specialist assigned to a tenant model to an actual group of housing specialists for the tenants. But so that has changed things. We did miss inspections. We were not doing in-person inspections for over a year. We are catching up on those and we are moving them back into a regular inspection schedule. Again, if you have concerns because we haven't been in a unit in 2 years, contact us. Those owner certification notices that we sent out, those are just stating that to the best of the landlord's knowledge, that there are no life-threatening deficiencies in the unit. This meets HUD requirements that we can attach it to that inspection that was not done to know that we had communicated with the landlord and that it wasn't just an oversight, that we didn't just miss an inspection. We are back out doing physical inspections and we're happy to see our tenants again. We're happy to see our landlords again. You know, it's just really, really nice to be able to talk to people in person. So HUD has offered us some waivers. This is just a step aside from our usual process. And part of that was the owner self-certification. They have also allowed us to do some remote inspections. These are inspections on household where somebody might be sick, where they might be immune compromised and they do not want somebody in their unit. All they have to do is just request that we do that, and we have the technology to do that. So again, we're back in doing in-person inspections. That can change at any time. We are still in a national pandemic, or I'm sorry, a worldwide pandemic. So we will try to communicate with landlords and tenants as much as possible on any changes that might happen. So where are we now? COVID has really, it's been eye-opening, I think, for any business, but especially housing authorities. We have gotten to take a look at what we can do better, what may be holding us back from change. We have learned how flexible we can be. And we're all doing this for the first time. This is, any business is really learning how to be flexible and still get things done. Still be there for everybody and work remotely. There could be surges, there could be variants. We've seen it. There could be new scientific findings. We could go back into a lockdown. Again, we will communicate with you if those changes happen. And again, I cannot really emphasize how much easier things can go, how well this can work with proper communication. And never hesitate to contact us. We love talking to you, and we love answering questions. I hear some landlords voice their frustrations, and really that's when you need to pick up the phone and give us a call. So best practices: always treat participants like any other tenant. So that's another, just a two-part statement, because our tenants don't get special treatment. They are to be treated exactly like their neighbors, other tenants that you have that are not on a subsidy. The other part of that is it is the landlord's responsibility to enforce the lease. Again, we're there to support you. And we want to know if a tenant is not upholding their end of the lease. We want to know that. But as a housing authority, there's other things that we look at and that landlords look at and we look at differently. And when it comes to inspections, HQS inspection should never be used in lieu of a landlord walkthrough or a landlord inspection. We look at two different things. There's some cosmetic that a landlord is going to say that's damage, and a housing authority is going to say, as long as that is functioning and in working order, we're going to pass it. So I know we've had landlords contact us about evictions or damage that they have seen, and request a special inspection for that. Again, we're happy to come out, but our findings may not be something that could assist you in, say, enforcing your own enforcement of a lease or an eviction. Okay. So if there's something going on in that household, you would treat that like if there were anything going on in a household that wasn't on a subsidy. And we see the whole gamut. We have phenomenal tenants, we have regular tenants, and then that rare occasion where you get a tough tenant. And that could be whether they're unsubsidized or not. All landlords, unfortunately, have to experience that, and hopefully not, but some landlords do experience that. And enforce your lease. We're there to support you. Talk about the issues with the tenants. Keep a good eye on your property. Pick up the phone, talk to the tenant, read the HAP contract, be familiar with our practices. And we're really flushing out our website. There are so many resources on our website. And but know before you even sign that RAFTA, read that contract, read that RAFTA, ask us questions. Those are the best practices. And then send copies of notices to the housing authority. Again, that's where we offer our support to you. So that's the end of my PowerPoint.